"31-year-old Mayvette Monzon was a bartender and a beloved member of the Filipino community in Vancouver. Mayvette worked in 4 different bartending positions simultaneously, and she was extremely popular and charismatic. She was described as kind and generous by everyone she interacted with. On September 23rd of 2003, Mayvette finished her shift at the Cheers nightclub in Delta and then drove home. She parked her car in front of the house, but before she could exit the vehicle, she was shot to death by an unidentified third party. Mere hours later, Mayvette's mother was leaving the house because she had an appointment at 9 a.m. She walked right past her daughter's car, completely unaware that Mayvette was dead. The murder was finally discovered later that afternoon when Mayvette's niece returned home. Mayvette's life was not categorized as high risk, although her job did put her in close proximity to people with gang affiliations. The police believed the murder had been a planned hit and was not random. They offered a $10,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. Sadly, these efforts led nowhere. No useful information was ever presented, and the case went cold. By 2009, Mayvette's family had lost hope that the murder would ever be solved. In 2014, Mayvette's mother shared her daughter's photo album with a reporter who worked for the Vancouver Sun. This photo album had initially been given to the Vancouver police as evidence, but the reporter noticed something that the police had apparently not. Among the innocent photos were several pictures of known gang members. Some of these people included Suk Dak and Manny Hiron, both of whom had been murdered in targeted shootings. Another photo showed Patrick Avery Plowman, who was involved in a beating and stabbing only 4 years after Mayvette's murder. One group photo showed Mayvette surrounded by United Nations gang members, including Sal Shabazz, who was shot and killed in Mexico in 2012, and Barzan T. Choili, who pled guilty to a murder plan between 2008 and 2009. None of this information was known to Mayvette's mother. In 2015, Crime Stoppers made another public appeal for information about the murder, but nothing more came to light. To this day, Mayvette's murder is still unsolved, and her family still misses her sorely. It seems extremely likely that her death was connected to gang activity in some way, but the exact details may remain shrouded in mystery forever. In 1995, 39-year-old Remy Pam Kaisberry was working as a production operator at a factory in Singapore. Remy Pam had separated from her husband in 1991 after he discovered that she was having an affair with his sister's brother-in-law, a 40-year-old man named Nadasan Chandra Sakaran. On April 17th of 1995, a man named Sojin Chui was jogging through the forest of Ulu Sembawang when he came across the dead body of a woman. Jin Shui was understandably in a state of shock after finding the body, and he did not report it to the police right away. He told his brother about the discovery, and his brother ended up contacting the authorities. An autopsy revealed that the woman had been stabbed 13 times in the head and neck, and she had broken ribs and a broken pelvis, suggesting that she may have been run over by a vehicle. The woman was eventually identified as Remy Pam. The investigation was led by Richard Lim Bang Ji, who had cracked several high-profile cases during his career. Remy Pam had last been seen alive at 12:15 p.m. at her place of work, which was roughly 6 hours before Jin Shui found her body. There were several tire tracks in the mud around the area where the body had been. 3 days later, the police arrested Nadasan Chandra Sakaran. Nadasan was married, had 3 children, and worked as a mechanic at a country club. He was considered a suspect due to his previous affair with Remy Pam, and he was charged with murder on April 22nd. Investigators found a broken tooth and several items of jewelry inside Nadasan's van. The jewelry apparently belonged to Remy Pam. Unfortunately, by the time these discoveries were made, Remy Pam's body had already been cremated, which meant that comparing the tooth to the corpse was impossible. However, Singaporean law enforcement sent the tooth to forensic experts at Scotland Yard, and they confirmed that it had belonged to Remy Pam. On January 11th of 1996, Nadasan stood trial for the murder. Nadasan's defense attorney was actually an acquaintance of his. The pair attended the same Hindu temple. The prosecution argued that Nadasan had committed the murder because Remy Pam had wanted to end their affair. They stated that he had stabbed her in his van and then run her over afterwards. They also received confirmation from a forensic expert in New Zealand that the tire tracks matched the tires on Nadasan's van. However, the defense argued that Nadasan was innocent. They cross-examined the forensic expert from Scotland Yard, who admitted that the sample they had tested was contaminated, and they had failed to follow the proper protocols during the testing process. They also cross-examined the forensic expert from New Zealand, who admitted that he had only reached his conclusion after looking at photos of the crime scene. He had never actually been there himself. Furthermore, he stated that there was only a 1 in 133 chance that the tires actually belonged to Nadasan's vehicle. The defense further argued that Remy Pam's tooth could have been in Nadasan's van because of her habit of opening beer bottles with her teeth. When Nadasan took the stand, he claimed that he had been repairing his van at the time of the murder. He had been driving home from work in order to get some lunch, and the vehicle had broken down, which was known to happen sometimes. At the time, it had been heavily raining, so it took him even longer than usual to fix the van. Nadasan's boss confirmed that he had called him and been informed that he was fixing the van. After this testimony, the prosecution called a mechanic to the stand. This mechanic stated that fixing the van should have only taken about 20 minutes, while Nadasan claimed it took him an hour. The defense urged the court to dismiss this testimony because the mechanic did not have any prior knowledge about Nadasan's van specifically. They also argued that Nadasan had behaved normally throughout that entire day, which was extremely unusual for someone who had committed a murder. On June 24th of 1996, the judge stated that he did not believe Nadasan's story of taking an hour to fix his van and the vehicle breaking down in the first place was a big coincidence. He also said that despite the flaws in the prosecution's evidence, their arguments were still stronger than Nadasan's. He was found guilty for the murder and given the death penalty. Until the law was changed in 2013, all murder convictions in Singapore resulted in the death penalty. The aftermath of this case influenced Singapore to invest in better forensic and DNA examination technology. On November 20th of 1996, Nadasan appealed his conviction in the Court of Appeal. The court decided that relying on the testimony of a mechanic who had no experience with Nadasan's van was unacceptable. They also threw out the evidence from the forensic expert in New Zealand due to the low probability of the tire tracks belonging to Nadasan's van. The tooth that was found in the van was impossible to conclusively identify due to contamination and Remy Pam's body already having been cremated. The court also argued that even if the tooth did belong to the victim, that did not necessarily mean it had fallen out during a struggle. It could have fallen out from an innocent cause, like while she was eating. The jewelry that had been found in Nadasan's van was also relatively generic and could have belonged to anyone. The Court of Appeal criticized the prosecution's case and the original judge's verdict. They found Nadasan not guilty of the murder and granted him an acquittal. He was released from prison on the same day of the court's decision. Convicted murderers typically did not succeed in the Court of Appeal in Singapore at the time, which caused this case to gain widespread national attention in the media. Remy Pam's husband stated that he still thought Nadasan was guilty and he was shocked by the court's decision. Remy Pam's mother was also stunned by the ruling. At the time of this case, Remy Pam's father had a chronic heart condition, so her mother never told him about his daughter's murder. Nadasan returned to his old life, raising his children and getting his job at the country club back. To this day, the murder of Remy Pam remains unsolved. What do you think? Was Nadasan responsible for her death, or was someone else behind it? We may never know the truth for certain. On May 1st of 2011, 3 men were visiting the Dundeok Mountain area in Mungyong, Korea, where they were looking for a good beekeeping spot. While they searched, they came across an abandoned stone quarry and they made a horrifying discovery. They found the dead body of a man with his hands and feet nailed to a cross and a crown of thorns on his head. They contacted the authorities immediately. The police were able to identify the man as a 58-year-old taxi driver with the surname Kim. The rest of his name is unknown to the public. Kim had gotten a divorce from his wife 10 years before his death. He had a son with her, and this son gave his liver to Kim. The son died at a young age sometime after the liver transplant, and Kim had a very difficult time coping with his loss. According to his co-workers, Kim was gentle, polite, and kind. Nobody knew Kim's religious beliefs, but most people who knew him either guessed he had no religion or he was Buddhist, which made the scene of his death that much stranger. Kim's body was thoroughly examined by investigators, which raised countless questions. The corpse was only wearing white underwear, and its wounds matched the 5 wounds of Jesus according to the Bible. There were also 2 smaller crosses next to the one on which Kim was hanging, which further indicates the killer was reenacting the biblical crucifixion. In front of the body, police found a rope that had been wrapped in duct tape. Their best guess was that this was used to simulate a whip. A piece of paper found near the scene read, quote, "Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews," in Latin. A mirror and a clock were also found at the scene, as well as a small hand drill, a knife, and a hammer. Due to the state of the man's body, most people who heard about the case assumed that Kim had been murdered. However, the National Forensic Service of Korea stated that it was likely a suicide. According to them, it wouldn't be impossible for Kim to have nailed himself to the cross. They even provided a step-by-step overview of how he could have pulled this off. Many people argued that even if Kim's death had been a suicide, he most likely had someone helping him. Regardless of whether or not nailing yourself to a cross is possible, it would certainly be difficult and extremely complicated. However, the authorities could find no hard evidence of another person being present at the scene. Of course, this does not mean that nobody else was involved. After Kim's death, there was heavy rain in the area, which could have washed away any signs of someone else's presence. This case is incredibly cryptic, and answers were much harder to find than questions. Yet another set of questions was raised by the witnesses in the case. Of the 3 men who had found the body, 2 were father and son. They had gotten in contact with a local beekeeper named Ju and asked him to help them find somewhere to go. Ju had been the one to suggest the stone quarry in question. After the discovery, Ju did not seem to have the same traumatized reaction as the father and son. He posted about the discovery on the online community he ran, including uncensored photos of the scene. In the post, he wrote, quote, "What led you to be in this state? Did you want to offer sacrifice for all of the sins caused by the corrupt world again? Or did you want to experience for yourself the pain of Jesus Christ when he died 2,000 years ago?" While Ju was waiting at the police station after the discovery, he overheard some officers talking about Kim's career as a taxi driver. Ju told the police that he believed he had met Kim before because Kim had been a part of the online community he ran. The community itself was religious in nature and promoted Christian beliefs that differed from mainstream Christianity. Ju was a former pastor and explained that Kim had visited him in Myeong back in 2008. According to Ju, Kim said that he believed himself to be Jesus Christ. Ju told him that he had misinterpreted the information on his online forum. Lastly, he stated that he showed Kim the stone quarry because it had a beautiful view. The police looked into Ju and his online community, but they could find no further evidence of contact between the men and nothing to link Ju to Kim's death. Kim's death is still a chilling, unsolved mystery. It's unknown if he had help with committing suicide or if he truly put the effort in to achieve his goal himself. Hopefully, more answers can come to light before long, but it seems as if this mystery will remain a mystery forever.